Hello everybody, I'm Chris Christensen. Welcome to another episode of Banging the Gavel. We're here today with Don Provencher, and our purpose is to talk about the upcoming Merrimack Village District annual meeting. Don is a civil engineer specializing in water issues, and he's also a commissioner for the Merrimack Village District, which runs the water systems in the town of Merrimack. He is not here representing the MVD, but we're trying to give some information about the upcoming meeting. One of the things we want to stress is that this annual meeting is where you vote. There's no ballot that you can cast an absentee ballot for warrant articles because they could be amended on the floor. So it's very important to attend the meeting so you can vote. And there's a couple of important warrant articles coming up, specifically to create bonds to make some improvements in the filtration system of the system. Don, can you tell us just a little bit more about how this is going? And it's going to be March 26th. That's right. A Tuesday night?
It's a Tuesday, 7 o'clock, James Mastrocola, Upper Elementary School, all-purpose room. You can probably come after 7 o'clock. The voting probably doesn't start until a little bit after the discussions of the warrants. If you don't want to hear the discussions, hopefully you do. But yeah, there are, there's one commissioner position that's going up for an election, and we have two warrant articles that deal with treatment of PFAS, and that is PFOA, PFOS chemicals known as PFAS. Warrant Article 2 deals with wells 7 and 8. And Warrant Article 3 deals with treatment, PFAS treatment at wells 2 and 3.
So let me interrupt on that for a minute. For those people that aren't old timers around here, the Merrimack Village District is a separate governmental body from the town and the school district. So you vote, and anybody can vote, even if you're not on the system. Is that correct?
You have to be a registered voter in Merrimack.
Okay.
That qualifies you to vote at this meeting.
So now we're talking about well 7 and 8 and 2 and 3.
Right.
So all the water in Merrimack comes from wells, with the exception of some emergency hookups from Bedford and Nashua.
Yeah.
Right?
One from Nashua.
So
yeah.
Can you just give us a quick rundown on, we've got well number 1. What's the status on that?
Well number 1's been out of service for years. That's
Okay.
the one that's by the MVD garage on Continental. Well 2 is off of Berry Lane, off of Amherst Road. Well 3 is behind the Merrimack Village District headquarters off of Greens Pond Road. Well 7 and 8 are over actually in Hollis. And those wells are being treated with green sand filters now, and the purpose is for removing iron and manganese. So there's already a big, large treatment plant over there at wells 7 and 8 in Hollis. Wells 2 and 3 don't have any treatment plant yet.
Okay, good. So at least we got a feeling for which ones. And then I think most people know, but we'll rehash it just a shade, that wells 4 and 5 are up near Reed's Ferry.
Right.
And those have been shut down due to higher levels of contamination.
Right.
And I want to be careful how I use that word contamination, because unless your water tests absolutely squeaky clean for nothing, then there's always going to be a little bit of contamination. It could be bacteria, it could be iron and manganese. Arsenic is natural in New Hampshire.
Right.
It's not desirable, but it's there, just naturally speaking. So contamination is a word we want to be careful of.
Right.
But that's what we're all going to be talking about. And
So
getting rid of that contamination is what we're all about.
Right. Wells 4 and 5 are being designed right now for PFAS treatment. St. Gobain did pay for about 75–80% of that. And that should be going out to bid later this spring, and under construction this year, and should be online by the end of next year right now for wells 4 and 5.
Good. Now, when you say we're paid for 80 or 90% of that, St. Gobain is St. Cobain is paying for that,
Right.
and the Merrimack Village District is paying for some.
The difference.
But
Yep.
I'm on was on the Clean Drinking and Groundwater Trust Fund Advisory Commission, long title.
Right.
But that trust fund also gave us a grant,
Right.
a matching grant, if you will. So we have some capital reserve funds,
Right.
and then we have that grant that will pay for some of it.
Yeah, so specifically there was $800,000 shortfall on wells 4 and 5 that St. Cobain didn't cover. The trust fund granted us $405,000, and we're matching with our own MVD money $405,000. We also got a grant from the same trust for investigating PFAS at wells 7 and 8. It's $20,000 grant from the trust fund, and we're putting up $12,500 of MVD money. And the study over there in Hollis is going to be to determine the PFAS that's affecting wells 7 and 8. Is it coming from TCI, or is it coming from the Amherst Industrial Park, or both? So we're going to try and figure that out.
Okay, so let me backtrack just a little bit on the Clean Drinking and Groundwater Trust. One of the things that comes out of that trust is low-cost loans and some grants. But in order to have a valid application, it's a matching grant.
Right.
So in order to have a matching grant, you have to have town meeting or village district annual meeting vote in favor of doing the work.
Right.
So I think it's very important to notice that we could get some help from out of town, but we still have to vote in favor of doing the work in order to qualify
Right.
for that.
And that would be a great representation to the trust that it's a serious project if the town warrants pass, obviously. So that's kind of the purpose of not applying for the grant at this point and kind of putting that off until we know that we have valid projects ahead of us or not.
So no joke intended, but on April 1st we could apply.
We could.
Okay. Now, there's 2 warrant articles.
Right.
Why don't you go into a little bit more detail on the,
Right.
let's go to the lesser one first, if you will. I'm going to rephrase that. Let's go to the one that's the highest priority first.
Right. The highest priority would be at wells 7 and 8. The reason they're somewhat of a higher priority is because wells 2 and 3 put out about the same water volume-wise as wells 7 and 8. But wells 7 and 8, the levels of PFAS are a little bit higher than at wells 3 and particularly 2. At wells 7 and 8, there's already that big treatment plant there. That was designed with expansion potential built into the plant, so the back wall can be bumped out. We could put PFAS filters, granular activated carbon filters there. We would actually put enough room in that building expansion to leave room for additional tanks if we needed them. One of the cost-saving measures that was considered was just putting in the lead tanks right now to remove the primary PFAS. If this was going to be done pursuant to maximum contaminant levels that the state would establish, then we would need to have lag filters. But right now, if the levels are still below the MCLs, there's no need for the lag filters. So this has been priced out with just the lead filters. And like I said, there's going to be enough room for lag filters if the MCLs get lowered enough that treatment is required. So right now, this is really elective treatment. But the price tag on well 7 and 8 is $3.6 million. It is basically the effect on the water bill. The average water bill in Merrimack is about $4 a month. It's about $49 a year. Now, there was studies done this summer that were approved by the MVD. One of them was the PFAS treatment cost analysis. We wanted to see how much it would cost to treat the well separately. And there was also a rate study done that took the cost from the PFAS cost analysis and figured out what the rate implications are. So the numbers that are on the warrant articles, and that's a petition warrant article, by the way. This is not proposed by the MVD. This is a petition warrant article proposed by, actually, Rosemary Rung was the primary petition petitioner on that. Those numbers were taken right out of the reports that MVD did authorize over the past summer. So that's wells 7 and 8.
Okay, that's good. Now, I happen to know from experience in another house that while we don't usually pay a lot of attention to how much water we're using, I realized from a drip, just a drip,
Yeah.
that my water bill went up $10 a month.
Yeah.
So I think
Wow.
I can probably save $4 a month just by doing some simple conservation things. If you have an older house like I do, with old-fashioned toilets,
Right.
flushes 5 gallons. New toilets would be 2.5 gallons or something in that range. So there's some easy things to do, and so I'm not afraid at all of
You could offset the cost.
$4. I can offset it, and if I paid attention, I'd probably make some money on it.
Yeah,
So that's a bargain in my book.
I agree. So the other warrant, that's warrant Article 2 for wells 7 and 8 that I just explained. Warrant Article 3 deals with wells 2 and 3. Now those are separated by about a mile away apart from each other, and there's no real filtration treatment at wells 2 or 3 right now. So warrant Article 3 would entail the construction of a large brand new water treatment plant. That water treatment plant could be anywhere at well 2, at well 3, or anywhere between the two. The $10.9 million figure that's associated with warrant Article 3 includes that mile of pipe construction. It also includes the new treatment plant building. One idea I had was sort of a master plan that would consider putting that building at the MVD maintenance garage on Continental Boulevard. You could also sort of combine the headquarters in that new building, and that would free up the existing office on Greens Pond Road. We could probably dispose of that property and make some income off of that. It is in the long-range plan to consolidate that office somewhere else.
But that's not part of this warrant
That's
article.
not part of the warrant article.
Just long-time future.
Right. I'm
Okay.
kind of explaining that this is sort of a whole master plan that we're kind of working to possibly here.
Okay.
But what is included in the warrant article is at well 3, because there's levels of iron and manganese there that need treatment, we need to remove that iron and manganese so that it doesn't foul the carbon filters when we want to do the PFAS treatment. So there's about $4.5 million that is included out of that 10.9 million number to treat the iron and manganese in well 3. Well 2 doesn't have iron and manganese, so we don't have to remove that first. So we could treat well 3, combine it with well 2, put all of that water through carbon tanks, and then all of the water would be treated. So basically, if you want all of the water treated in Merrimack, you would need to approve both warrant articles 2 and 3. The price tag for warrant article 3, as I said, $10.9 million. That's about $112 a year, and it is about $9 a month on the average water bill. Out of that $112 a year, 36 of that is just related to removing iron and manganese. And that iron and manganese removal is on the capital improvement plan for 2023. So we'd be kind of pulling that forward in warrant article 3. So that's essentially, that's the description of warrant
It seems to
article 3.
me we're doing a lot of planning for the future here, in
Right.
the sense that, and you can put on your engineer's hat and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but right now the water that comes out of your tap in Merrimack is consistent with EPA and
It is.
Department of Environmental Services standards.
It is.
Those standards are going to be, I don't want to say lowered, that's a bad implication. They're going to be
Revised.
more strict.
Updated.
Going to
Yeah.
be more strict. And I think we're still right on the edge there. We're still putting out clean water.
Right.
However, I've been watching this over the last several years, and it's not just Merrimack. We're seeing this, or New Hampshire. We're seeing PFAS discoveries all across the country, and part of that is because nobody was looking for it before, but now that we have a better ability to test for it.
Right.
So my feeling is that as we move forward as a country, we're going to be reducing or getting more strict with those requirements.
Right.
And I think as a town, we want to be ahead of that and get our clean water clean
It's
before
definitely
we have to backtrack and start over again at some midpoint.
right. There's in the last 2 or 3 years, there's definitely been a clear trajectory of a consistent lowering of drinking water standards in terms of PFAS compounds. Now we're regulating more PFAS compounds. Before it was only 2 compounds. When all of this started, it was 400 back before 2016. That went down to 100.
It's
went
400
down to
parts per
70
trillion.
parts per trillion. Right now we're at 70. The DES, Department of Environmental Services, did propose new maximum contaminant levels, MCLs, in January. 38 for PFOA and 70 for PFOS. Just recently in February, the DES came out with a public notice based on some documentation or publication that was reviewed from the Minnesota Department of Public Health. The DES issued a statement saying that based on that document, there's potential for the limits to be lowered significantly below 38 and 70. So even after a month, from January to February, there's still more concern. So we don't know how low they're going to go. We don't know what the final number is going to be, but the water in the rest of Merrimack's wells typically ranges from as low as 8 to 10, maybe as high as 33, 35, depending on which wells. So it kind of gives you a flavor for where the water is with respect to where the limits are and might be going. So planning for the future certainly is a prudent thing.
Well, I see some parallels here with other unfortunate occurrences, let's call it. Years ago, depends upon how old you are in the audience, but I remember it. They used to put a package warning on a pack of cigarettes that said, may be detrimental to your health. And that was on there for some years. And then came out and changed the warning to say, will cause.
Right.
And there was no difference in the chemical makeup of what you were smoking. They learned more about it. And right. I see that same kind of thing happening here, that as we learn more about it, and we develop testing for more types of chemicals and start having the ability to test that we didn't have 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Then we're going to find more and more problems to solve.
Yeah, we didn't know the stuff was there because you couldn't measure it back 5,
exactly.
10 years ago.
Yeah,
now we can
exactly.
measure it. Now the question is, well, what does it mean? And there's a lot of studies, even this 2018 in particular, in the summer with the CDC report on minimum risk levels of 7 and 10 for PFOA, PFOS. And there's been other studies that have come out. There's been a lot of states that are lowering their limits. You know, everybody probably knows Vermont's at 20. New York's talking about 10. New Jersey 14. California 14. There's a lot of numbers that are lower than people would expect them to be. And like you said, it took 10 years to change the wording on a pack of cigarettes. I don't know if people want to wait around 10 years to find out that the water they've been drinking for the last 20 or 30 years should have been lower. So that's part of the proactive movement of these warrant articles, in my understanding.
So we also have, and this one isn't quite as expensive, in fact, probably no expense, but there's a warrant article related to establishing a new capital reserve fund. Is that
yes, for
correct interpretation?
For litigation purposes, basically. That's Article 7, I believe, and that is being proposed by the MVD. It's $100,000 for a capital reserve fund for litigation purposes. And that's not only defense, but it's also if we want to seek damages You know, and we're going to be doing things to look to see where contamination's coming from. I mentioned the study that we're doing at wells 7 and 8. You know, we already have a settlement agreement in place with St. Gobain for wells 4 and 5. If the MCLs change, or if different parameters, different PFAS compounds become regulated, that can open up that agreement again. So we have been spending money on legal fees, trying to keep ahead of all of this. So that is another warrant article that's going to be on the ballot, and I think that's an important one.
Well, let me interrupt on that one a little bit. My understanding, or my historical recollection, is that when we've put money into capital reserve funds, it has come from end-of-year surplus.
Yeah.
That we made a small profit at the end of the year, and we saved that profit, putting it in capital reserve funds. There's 3 of them: one for facilities and equipment, one for system development, and one for land acquisition.
Right.
So this one would be a separate one. And establishing a capital reserve fund, I think, requires a 2/3 vote as well. So I think that should be easy to get, because it's not taking anything out of your pocket. It's not as far as I know, it's not doing anything that is going to affect your rates.
Yeah, I'm not positive on that, but I think you're right.
Nevertheless, it's a good idea to have the ability to move forward. I know a lot of people have asked, you know, why are we paying for this?
Right.
And I go back to an MTBE experience that I had. Started 2003, so 16 years ago. And the state started a lawsuit against oil companies that were putting MTBE in gasoline.
Right.
And the state had been paying for some cleanups through a fund that had been established for oil remediation. And I need you to keep an eye on the clock.
Yeah, we've got 4.5 minutes.
Okay. It goes quickly.
It does.
In any event, we were able to go out and do remediation on the sites, but then it took 13 years afterwards before the court case was settled. And of course that was paid for by at the state level by the Attorney General's office. So I'm pleased to see this is coming forward. I'm sure that if we get into that situation, it'll take some years.
And I think that's exactly the point. If we want to get litigation first, or even settlement agreement, and right now the MCLs aren't low enough, so I don't know if we really have a case for litigation or anything. But we can proceed with treatment now, and we can always seek restitution in the future.
Right.
And that's part of the part of my reason why I'd like that Article 7 with the legal fund set up for MVD. So, with only about 3 minutes left, I think the takeaways from this that I'd like to leave you with is that, well, 7 and 8 is important. It's less of a price tag. It's certainly a priority. If for any reason anybody's against these warrant articles, I would certainly advise you to look at wells 7 and 8. That's Article 2. You get a lot more bang for the buck on that. We've already got the infrastructure in place on that. If you want all of the water treated in Merrimack, then you would also want to vote for Article 3. And at that point, once 4 and 5 come online, we'll have, these are going to be addressing wells 2 and 3 and 7 and 8. Those are the 6 wells that we have in town. Basically, all our water would be treated at that point. The MCLs are consistently coming down. I don't see a reason why everybody would want to wait another year, 2, 5. You know, it seems like we're getting there at some point.
That's a good point. What's kind of the timeline here? Well 4 and 5 treatment facility should come online in 2021?
Should be 2021.
Okay.
Now, well 7 and 8, it's a lot more streamlined, so there's a chance we could get the design and construction done in 2021. Our consultants are saying 2022, but they also said we could possibly get well 7 and 8 on in 2021. Wells 2 and 3, because it's a lot more comprehensive master planning, I would say that one would be the earliest, probably 2022, the way it's looking right now, if that passed.
Okay, so I want to go back just a little bit. We talked at the beginning of the show about the town meeting angle of this.
Right.
So this is, I'm going to call it an old-fashioned or traditional town meeting. You come, when it's time to vote, you raise your hand, the moderator counts the hands and declares a winner or a loser.
Yeah, I think on these warrant articles, it will be a ballot vote.
Yep, exactly right. Because they're a bond article, they will be voted on with a ballot, but because they're on the floor of the meeting, they could be amended.
They can.
So
Right.
you can't stay away and vote absentee on,
Right.
on something that can still be amended.
Right.
However, if you have babysitter issues and you're going to send one person to the meeting and the other one stays home to babysit, the ballot boxes have to stay open for at least 1 hour.
Right.
For almost anybody in town, that's time for one person to come and vote, go home, trade cars, and person number 2 come and
And
vote.
this is typically live streamed, so you'll be able to kind of gauge when the voting starts. And I believe it's going to be set up so you only have to actually take the ballot and vote once instead of going up to the box 2 or 3 times.
Right. Yeah, because on the ballot will be the elections, and,
Right.
and you can get an absentee ballot from that. You have to go down to the office on Greens Pond Road. So you can get that ballot.
So 10 seconds left.
Okay.
I just
So,
want to go ahead and
March
remind-
26th, Tuesday night, 7 p.m.
Absolutely.
Come vote. And there will be
Hope to
plenty
see
of
you.
explanations of what the voting is all going to be about. Don, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good deal. And we're closing it out for today. Meeting adjourned.
Great.